Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to be here today with Dr. Yvette Best, head of compensation, PTO benefits, personnel records at Publix supermarkets. Dr. Best, Yvette, how are you doing today?
Hello.
Why is my camera right now not working? I don't understand.
No idea, but you literally just went dark.
I just went like dark.
And
there you
you're
go.
back.
And I'm back. All right. No, thank you so much for being here. I had so much fun meeting you and your team at the SRRC conference in St. Pete at the Don Cesar, and I felt like we kind of had a chance to kind of bond a little bit and kind of get to know each other a little bit. And when I heard about your story, I was like, we got to tell this story. And I appreciate you being here so much. I really do.
No problem, Ben. And likewise, my team and I enjoyed you equally as much. And, glad for this opportunity just to, kind of share the my journey, the experience, how it ties into the mobility world, and, excited to dive right in.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking about, how do we support folks with breast cancer? How can we be more supportive? What to expect? We're going to talk about how it ties into global mobility. We're going to answer your questions and comments out there. If you're watching right now, do me a favor. If you're tuning in right now on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, hit that like button right now. Feel free to also share this with your community, with anyone you think that needs to hear it. We got people checking in. Let's see who's checking in with us right now. Go ahead and check in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you are, what's going on. Cliff Bierman. Hello. Hello, Cliff. Good to see you, buddy. He was in St. Pete. Rita Wall. Yay, Yvette.
Hey, Barb.
Look at this. You got Barb. There you go. Are you a Michigan fan?
That's where I went to undergrad.
Wow. Why did I not know that? That's incredible.
I was getting ready to say, how did you not know that?
How did I not know that? Look at stats and research. Where are y'all at? All right. Anyway, Barb representing. That's great. Jamie Massler. Hi, Ben and Yvette. Cheers from Chile, Mississippi. Can we go back just for 1 second? Because I believe Michigan and Michigan State are playing this weekend.
They are.
They could be a good one. I think number 6,
and
number 8.
Both 7-0 this year. So this is the first time that's happened in over a decade.
Care to make a bold prediction, Yvette?
Hello, the Wolverines. Come on.
I think they're 4-point favorites. This should be interesting. Jamie Massler. Cheers from Chile, Mississippi. All right, Jamie, it was great seeing you last week in Chicago. Doug Barnett, Yvette, you rock.
Hey,
love
Dougie.
you, Dougie B.
That's my boo.
See, I did not know Doug was Dougie B. So now we have a new nickname for Doug on the show. This is fantastic. I love this community. Tim Quirk, hello, Yvette and Ben. Looking forward to learning today. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, super producer Stacy, for all you do on the show. It was great seeing you in Chicago last week. Looking forward to learning more about Yvette's story. Me too, Stacy. Roger Sorhagen. Raj, what's going on? Jana, happy Thursday, everyone. So excited to know you, Yvette. Great things, hearing great things. Roger, greetings from Clinton, New Jersey. Pink October. Yvette's rocking it. I've got a little pin here. It's not as cool as Yvette's blouse and jacket situation.
I've got my pin on too. I saw yours, Ben.
We're pin buddies. All right.
Represent.
John checking in.
Hey, John.
Great. Valerie from gorgeous Phoenix. Giddy up. Great. Brian Deegan from NEI's in the house. Aaron Venable. Hit that like button. Throw a litlittle love out there. Hit that little love button. Throw a little applause button out there as well. Let's see here. Shanika Harper.
Hi, Shaniqua. I know I owe you an email response.
Oh, is this how we get emails from Yvette? We tune in here and be like,
right.
Yvette, I believe.
Can you answer me, please?
Please. This is great. Love it. Shaniqua, Lynn Madison checking in. Scott, Janet Turner. Fantastic. We got London in the house. Patience.
Oh, Patience. Hey.
This is fun. Look at this. Valerie, go blue.
All the way. Oh, there's Camden.
Camden. Roger Sorhagen twice in a day. There you go. All right, let's hop in. And if you've got questions for Yvette, please get active here in the comments. This is a safe place to learn. Yvette's super open with her story. I'm gonna just kind of hop right in, Yvette, if I may.
Absolutely.
When and where were you when you were first diagnosed with breast cancer?
So I took my daughter to Belgium, France, London, and Belgium for her graduation, kind of, yay, you've graduated high school. And we were sitting on a corner having Belgian waffles, how cliche.
Mm-hmm.
And my phone rang and I saw it was the nurse from my doctor's office. And I was like, ooh, is this good news or bad news? And I kind of had a feeling that it would be you're positive for cancer. And lo and behold, that's the case. So that was June of 2018, June 7th to be exact, because I remember it was a Thursday. And, we have been having like the most amazing vacation, and the news hit me like, I don't know, like a lead brick. And at the end of the day, it was Thursday. We weren't scheduled to leave until the following Tuesday. And I was like, there's no way I'm letting this diagnosis ruin this trip for my daughter, ruin this trip for me and my best friend. So, I had a moment of, let me cry it out. I walked around the corner, shed tears for 3 to 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, let's finish this vacation. I'll deal with this when we're back in the States.
Your daughter's amazing, by the way. I had the chance to meet her at SRRC. She's fantastic. Did you tell her right away?
I did, yes.
You did?
Yeah.
What were your first thoughts? What was that moment like? I mean, after the shock kind of subsided, what were your thoughts?
So there's so many thoughts that go through your head, because when they first tell you, they don't tell you what stage. And so that really was my first thought. Like, oh my gosh, is this stage 1 or is it stage 4? Is this treatable? Is it not? How long do I have? I mean, quite honestly, in that moment, it's like, if this is stage 4, how much time do I have with my daughter? She just graduated high school. Am I going to make it through, the college, the marriage, the kid? Am I going to be a grandmother? There's so many thoughts that go through your head. And for me, it was, okay, you're rushing the diagnosis, take a step backwards. And, then you run off with, well, how am I going to handle treatment? So there's just so many kind of tentacles that were off on this process in terms of what the next steps would be. But those were literally my first thoughts, is how much time do I have?
Wow. I didn't even realize that they didn't kind of give you an indication of stage. And I can't imagine what not knowing feels like as well. Cliff has a question. Thank you for bringing these questions up. Let's bring these questions. Let's make it interactive. This is about the audience and the opportunity for everyone to learn here as well. Liz saying hi, Yvette. She's amazing. It's good to see you, Liz. Cliff says, do you have a family history? Please discuss the importance of early testing and detection. Was this something you had a history?
I do not have a family history of breast cancer. However, if they had told me through the colonoscopies that I had colon cancer, I wouldn't have been shocked, because multi-generational history of either stomach or colon cancer in the family, but no history of breast cancer, which is why I have to overemphasize the importance of early detection and self-exams. I found the cancer myself first time and the second time. And yes, there were 2 separate diagnoses. And so the reason for the repeated testing back in 2018 was because I felt a lump during the monthly breast self-exam. And it was from that I insisted that the doctors, send me for additional follow-up, additional testing. And I literally had the breast biopsy at 11 a.m. the day I was scheduled to take a 5 p.m. flight overseas. And so, they were like, oh, we can get you in on Thursday. Not going to work. I need to get in today because I'm on a flight tonight. So, when we talk about, kind of early testing, early diagnosis, it cannot be overemphasized, the importance. But also, people don't think about the men, because men, you have breasts as well. And so it's critically important that you're doing the same things that we encourage women to do. And the other piece of it is, it's not like it used to be where it was, women over a certain age. Yes, I was diagnosed, I'm 54 now, and that was 3 years ago, so 51, 52. But at the end of the day, it's younger generations are also being diagnosed, because I do know and speak to some college students and kind of help them with the whole, kind of mental challenges that they're going through and just, the whole process. And so definitely encourage early testing. No, there was no history.
How early should women get tested and start to get screened?
So I think that the new rules now on early on testing starts at 40. But again, if you are younger than 40, I highly encourage you, if you feel something that's not right, you know your body better than anybody. And if you feel something is not right, whether or not it's your breast feels warm, you're always itching on one particular side of your body, you have sharp pains, get all of that stuff investigated by your doctor.
That's really helpful. You talk about men also need to. This is not just a women's disease. You talk about men. Here it is. We're going into Movember, right? And Vinny Valverde is out there, encouraging us to grow our mustaches and talk about testicular cancer, talk about prostate cancer, talk about suicide, talk about all these men's issues. We do not talk about breast cancer at all in the male community. What should we be doing as men? And that's really, honestly, a lot of my questions have to come from, what is my role here? How do I help? How do I support? But also as a potential, as a potential patient one day, what do I need to be doing as far as screening? Is it also 40? Are there different guidelines?
The guidelines for men typically are older, so the 50 plus. But again, I think it goes back to the monthly self-exams. And so, like when you all are working out, for example, let's say you're into weightlifting, but you notice that something's not right in your pecs, it's time to get that checked. And so, it's one of those things that's not talked about because it's typically seen as a woman's disease. And so I think the best way for men to encourage other men is make it a part of your routine screenings. When you go in to get that prostate exam, and other screenings that you do as part of the annual physical, include the breast self-exam, either from yourself on a monthly basis or your primary care physician when you go in for your annual screenings.
This is really, really eye-opening for me already. And I will definitely start I'm 38, I'll be 39 next month. But a monthly self-exam isn't too much to ask, right? I think that's just
it really
easy.
isn't. You can do it in the shower.
Yeah.
Think about that. When you raise your arm, and it's important that you have the right technique. So when you raise your right arm, or this is my left, but when you raise your left arm, use the other hand to kind of go around, starting underneath the armpits, and that's critically important.
Under the armpit.
Under your armpit, and that's I emphasize that because for me, that's where I first noticed pain and tenderness. And I'm, was recently still in treatment for lymphedema because the concern was the cancer in my lymph nodes? Turns out that it wasn't, but that's the first place where oftentimes breast cancer patients will feel certain pain. And then just kind of do a clockwise motion around your entire breast and bring it in so that, it's kind of starting with the outside and all the way up to the nipple and areola area. And you do that same thing in the shower on the other side. It literally takes minutes, like not even.
That was awkward just now, but I'd never been taught how to give myself a self-examination, honestly.
Yeah. But if you do it on a monthly basis, when there is something that does not feel right, you'll know it because you're used to doing it on, a consistent regimen, that when you do feel something different, you'll know. You're like, wait a minute, I don't recall that being there the previous month.
Yeah, Cliff, are you checking with me?
Cliff.
Are we checking?
Agree.
That's great.
Get your hands up, do the left side, get the hands up, do the right side.
What's crazy? We're being educational, we're having a little fun, but there could be somebody watching this show right now who does a self-examination and finds something that they want to get checked out.
Exactly. And then the next step would be go straight to your doctor.
Just general care physician.
Correct. Yeah, your primary care is the first step. And if they see something that's not right, they'll send you in for the, breast ultrasound or, depending on the severity, an MRI. and to confirm a diagnosis. And then there's always the biopsy if the scans actually do find something that needs to be looked at.
This is so educational. Rita saying, I'm so glad you brought up men. I had a family member diagnosed with ductile cancer, and no one thinks about men getting breast cancer.
Exactly.
Wow. Jana Chesnowski, great point, Yvette. Thanks for sharing. Ray's checking in from Vancouver. Thank you, Ray. Cliff's got a comment or question. He says, also, can you talk about being your own patient advocate? As sometimes people do not get treated with urgency when urgency is needed.
Ooh, that one right there. So that I cannot overemphasize the importance of, being your own advocate, but also pushing your physicians to actually listen to you. So you're scheduled for an appointment, you go in, they check a few boxes, the tech might take your blood pressure, check your temperature, doctor comes in, you might have to open your mouth for, the tongue depressant, check the back of your throat and tonsils. But then you have all these lists of questions and you feel pressured that you have to, get everything out in a certain amount of time. I'm one of those that, hey, you had me sitting in the waiting room for 15 minutes. I'm going to use my 30 minutes of fame or however long it takes for me to get through the list that I have. If you're not getting the responsiveness you need from your particular physician, it's time to move on to another one. Don't take the, the response that, well, we don't feel anything, so there's probably nothing. You have to really push them that, well, I feel something and I'm going to need you, if it's a situation where you have to have a referral to go get certain tests, I highly encourage everyone to push the doctor to write that referral so that you can receive confirmation of the diagnosis or non-diagnosis. But at the end of the day, being your own advocate is critically important. Don't rely on the medical professionals who might not be having a good day, who might, make you feel rushed within your appointments, or family members who say, oh, you're just over exaggerating, you'll be fine. Because you may have lifted weights the day before, and they tell you that, oh, the pain will dissipate in a couple of days. If you do not feel right and it's, that expounds beyond breast cancer, then get it checked out.
Wow. Yeah. Because your body better than anyone. And if you've been doing those regular self exams, to your point, you're going to notice differences. They don't have that point of reference in that context. This is great. Keith Michelson, thanks for sharing. I did not know. Keith, it was great seeing you in Florida too. Scott, speaking of family, Scott's got a great question. How can we encourage our stubborn family members who don't like going to the doctor to get exams? We've all got those family members, and some families it's us, right? How do we convince them?
So, sometimes family members who don't like the doctor, there's obviously a reason. Either it's a bad experience, the first piece that I would recommend is find out what the fear is, why they don't want to go to a doctor. Is it the hospital facility in and of itself? Is it the private practice doctor? And whatever that response is, take them to the opposite. Also load them up with, kind of data and facts. So when you're in the doctor's office and they have the little pamphlets or leaflets on the wall, it might be a matter of just providing them with additional information that they previously were not privy to, because a lot of the fear comes from lack of education or lack of knowledge or information about certain diagnoses. Same thing happens with, kind of the fear of doctors. They might have had a bad experience, whether or not it's a doctor of a particular gender, doctor of a particular race, doctor of a particular age for that matter. Sometimes there's the fear that the older doctor's knowledge is not as new as, someone fresh out of their residency, et cetera. So you have to get to the root cause of it and, kind of push them and encourage them and explain to them that, the early diagnoses leads to longevity. And that, that will hopefully help with getting them in to get all of the necessary tests. But, not only is there fear of going to the doctor, a lot of times it's the fear of going to the doctor and what the doctor might say. And oftentimes that has to do with the fact that folks know they're not living right. They know they're not eating right. And so, kind of look at what some of the root causes are behind what that fear is.
Great points. I find with root causes too, if you ask why 5 times, you'll get to the root cause. And that's how you identify, Yvette, this is great stuff here. Elizabeth saying, yep, my dad went in for a sore throat. His voice was starting to get hoarse. Next thing you know, he had stage 4 cancer, throat cancer. Everyone was like, it's just a sore throat. It's nothing.
Right.
Wow.
Perfect example. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry. Lung cancer, not breast cancer, lung cancer. Yeah. I'm sorry about that, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Jamie saying, I've heard a lot of diagnoses have been delayed due to people not going to checkups due to COVID and thus allowing cancer to spread further or metastasize. Is this an issue we have to be concerned about?
It's a huge issue. So a perfect example was I had my first diagnosis in 2018, and the second diagnosis came in November of 2019. And I went in for surgery to have, the first time I had the double mastectomy. And so that was a complete shock when almost a year to the date, I had the second diagnosis. And so I ended up having a lumpectomy in December of 2019. So because of the aggression of the type of cancer I had, that meant, fast forward to 2020, that I would have had to go through, chemo or radiation right during the pandemic. And I chose the radiation avenue as opposed to chemotherapy. And there was a lot of fear, a lot of people who stopped going to the doctor for, routine exams, but there were also folks who were afraid to come in to continue their treatment during COVID because of, just the fear of the virus spreading. I can testify that there was no place I would have rather been than in a hospital at that time, because when I tell you the protocols were so high, visitors weren't allowed, you couldn't bring in anyone with you to your appointments like you used to be able to do. When I first started going, there were, multiple chairs in the waiting rooms. There were chairs that were brought out of the waiting room so that, you kept your 6 feet distance apart. There used to be a cute little snack and coffee bar. That was all shut down. So, while there are fears about, whether or not I'm going to contract a disease, contract the virus while I'm going through treatment, I want to completely dispel that myth. If you have recently been diagnosed with something, exclusive of breast cancer, go to the doctor, continue your treatments. If you're in the process of, multiple MRIs, ultrasounds, et cetera, and you're avoiding the whole biopsy for fear of, not just COVID, but for fear of what the test might reveal, go in and get the test, because I cannot overemphasize, I'm sitting here because early detection does save lives. Not only did I find the first cancer, but I also found the second cancer as well. But the second cancer diagnosis was more obvious. It was almost overnight. I went to bed, woke up, standing in the mirror in my nightshirt, and saw the lump through my nightshirt. Thought that it was, just something underneath my clothing, and went to sweep it off and realized, oh wait, this is a lump. So I lifted up the shirt and was like, damn, where the hell did that come from? And I sent a photo to not my primary care or my breast surgeon. I sent a photo to the plastic surgeon who did my implants and reconstruction, because I thought it had something to do with the implants. Wow. And he immediately said, you need to come in because that's not looking anything, looking like anything related to the implants. And I was still living in DC at the time. My care team was here in Orlando, hopped on a plane, flew down here, and they were like, this is not implant related. You need to reach out to your breast surgeon.
It happened that quick and that dramatically that you just, one day you saw it and the next, one day you didn't see it and the next day you saw it through your shirt.
And, I still think about that to this day, Ben, because it's like, how did I overlook seeing the lump before? And, is it something that I wore, too tight that, caused it to come to the surface so quickly? And what the plastic surgeon said to me that honestly, the implants probably saved my life because of where the lump was, in terms of the recurrence of the cancer, is that it was probably pressing against the implant, which caused it to protrude through the skin, which allowed me to see it.
Oh, wow. So did you catch it, would you say early or
I
late?
did. I caught it early. It was
Early.
the first cancer diagnosis was stage 2, and the second one, what they call it 2+, because I wasn't quite a 3. So as far as I'm concerned, that's still early. Late is late 3 or 4. But yeah.
God bless. This is great. Thank you so much for being so open with this. Aaron Venable, wow, so sobering. Thank you for being a voice for this. Beverly Bell, and this is what I'm talking about. There are so many eye openers in what Yvette has shared. I just invited my husband to come into my office to listen. Yvette, I thank you. Wally thanks you.
Very welcome.
Wow. Shannon Barnes, wow, you're such a fighter, Yvette. So much is a positive and fighting attitude as well.
And you know what? That right there, thank you, Shannon, for bringing that up, because in all of the, kind of support groups that I've attended meetings, for breast cancer survivors, thrivers, and, honestly, folks who have lost family members to breast cancer, one of the things that I've learned is a positive outlook. Does help with the, kind of the process and the journey itself. That's not to say that there are still not days to this day that, I don't cry just thinking about, what I've been through, that, I still have fears about, kind of what does tomorrow bring? Because this is an ongoing process for me. I'm in monthly treatment. I get an injection every month. Every quarter, I have to give blood work to check my numbers. And so it's something that, unless your cancer is fully in remission and completely gone, that you do live with on a daily basis. But, I credit friends like Ann Moore, who, Ben, because having the experience that she went through with her husband, there were certain things that she prepared me for. And, it's important that you surround yourself with kind of a network of folks who either A, have an understanding and are fully supportive of what decisions you decide to make. Because I had a lot of criticism, in the beginning about, well, your early stages, it was only found in the left breast. Why are you having a double mastectomy? There was a lot of negativity, and I had to separate myself from a lot of that just for my own mental well-being.
Wow. I can't even
I
imagine.
did not do chemo and radiation. I had the double mastectomy and radiation. So it was 5 days a week for 6 weeks.
5 days a week for 6 weeks. So I've got so many questions. How do you balance, or are you working during this time?
I am. Let me backtrack. So the second diagnosis, which was November 2019, I had just quit my previous job. And the summation of that and the whys, stress does play a huge part in cancer diagnoses. And I was extremely, extremely stressed at my last place of employment. And it was taking a toll on me. And so I opted to leave that stress behind. At the time of the radiation, I was consulting only. And so, I do have my own HR consulting practice. And so that was the benefit to me, that I didn't have to go into an office every single day while also going through the radiation treatments. I am working full-time right now. And it's a balance. But the benefit is that, I have great teams that report into me that, are fully knowledgeable about, my health and what I need. The biggest challenge today, as it has been through this entire process, is just the extreme fatigue that I go through. And, it cannot be understated how that has an impact on you, because at times I'm so fatigued that if you ask me 1 + 1, I literally would have to stop and think about it, which is, by the way, a challenge when you talk about, dealing with people's money and
compensation. Yeah, you got some pretty
But,
complex calculations.
it's real. It's real. But you have to take a step back and always put yourself first. And that's what I do. There are days that are harder than others, but I push through, but I also know my limits. So when I'm extremely tired, I might want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, not today. The body is telling me no. And I used to super push through, but now I pause and listen.
So how do, as we're all listening to this story, Roger, amazing courage, Ray, thank you for sharing. You're talking about, what you went through and what you continue to go through. How do we support our friends, our colleagues, our family members who are going through this fight?
So there's a couple of different things. One is, do not ask a person who is recently diagnosed, well, what do you need? I find that to be one of the most useless questions. And here's why. They have no clue what they need. They have just had their world turned upside down by the diagnosis. And so you asking them, although it's the most sincere question in the world and you genuinely want to help, they honestly have no clue. For example, a group of friends in the relo industry took it upon themselves, and I am forever grateful to this day, when they found out how I was getting to my radiation treatments, because I had to take one bus to transfer to another bus and then walk a little ways to get to my appointments. And they're like, yeah, 2 city buses in DC, that's not happening. And what they did was they gave me multiple Uber gift cards so that I could ride share to and from my appointments, because I underestimated how exhausted I would be from the treatments. And it was a progression that happened. The first week I was like, not so bad. But by that 3rd or 4th week, I felt like I had been hit by a Mack truck. By the 5th or 6th week, I was done. You couldn't eat. I could barely keep my eyes open. And this is not chemo. This was radiation. But because I had such intense radiation, it was, coming from multiple angles. I was being burned ridiculously. I still have the scars from, the radiation burns. But, I would say, don't ask what they need. Set up a schedule amongst the friends to bring over meals, to, if you have the availability, to offer to transport them to their appointments. Simple things like, after, and, I can laugh now, but it was a struggle back then. Because I had the double mastectomy, I had no idea that I would not be able to use my arms. And so for several weeks, I was walking around like a dinosaur. So obviously the ability to keep house was a challenge. And we're talking things like, okay, I'm in the bathroom and I have to wipe. You learn to be extremely acrobatic. And so, set up a schedule where, maybe once a week, once every other week, you come through and you help them with house cleaning. If the person has children, I have benefit of, my child was an adult when I was first diagnosed. But if they have younger kids, maybe just coming over and taking the kids, out for an hour or two, just to give the patient, mom or dad, an opportunity to just rest and decompress without worrying about them and the kids. So there's, the list goes on in terms of, what friends and family can do, to help out. And from an HR perspective, in terms of the organizations, what they can do and how they can help is to just be flexible when an associate tells you that, they're extremely fatigued, or, they need some time off to do X, Y, and Z, because it makes a world of difference, so that your patient is not stressing over, well, I have to meet said project deadline, but I also am feeling like, I can't even lift my head at the moment.
Wow. This really makes it real. Honestly, as you talk through just the day-to-day struggles, it really resonates. And I love what you're saying about just kind of getting the Uber gift cards and being specific in the ways that you try to assist and help and being proactive. I think that's great. Let's see here. Danny's saying, thank you so much for sharing your story, Yvette.
Okay.
Danny, I know you've had family members who have gone through this. Roger says, I can appreciate your position firsthand. I'm a 12-year survivor. Nice.
Hey.
People are just, empathizing here with the fatigue. Barb Hale and more is nothing but amazing. I don't know what this means, Barb. Yvette, did you get tested like Angelina Jolie?
You know what? It's we laugh, but Angelina is part of why I did what I did, because I did follow her journey, and several other, there are some folks in the media, and then, there's folks closer in my circle. And people often asked her, why opt for the double mastectomy? Because she hadn't even, if I recall, been diagnosed, but because of the history in her family. For me, it was the fear of, well, I go and I have just the single mastectomy, and then, the cancer shows up on the other side. Well, let's just avoid that altogether. And then there's the, quite honestly, the beauty side of it. I'm like, well, why get one chopped off and not get the other chopped off? And, I was like, well, if I'm going to have a nice set, let me get a matching set. So,
you know what? I hear that. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
It really does.
Barb says, absolutely, I would do the same thing. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. And I appreciate your ability to laugh as well. Val, there are also DNA genetic screenings that can tell you if you are predisposed to cancer. I had mine done at the University of Michigan, as many forms of cancer run in my family, and has always been a worry. I still do my checks, but allowed me to not have constant fear.
So I also did, after the first diagnosis, the genetic screenings, so there's the basic, which is the BRCA1 and the BRCA2, where they, kind of check for whether or not you'll have predisposition to breast cancer. But believe it or not, there's up to 36 or 39 additional screenings. It's all one screening, but there's 39 different genes that can be checked for whether or not you're predisposed to the disease. The challenge with some genetic or DNA screenings has to do with insurance, of course. The test can be expensive, and the insurance companies will oftentimes fight you on, well, we'll cover the basics, which, BRCA1 and BRCA2, but we won't cover all these others because you don't have, and that was a challenge for me because I didn't have a family history. But, my argument was, but I have multiple diagnoses in less than a year's time. So clearly there's something going on. So let's get this checked out. It took months for me to get the insurance approval to have the more comprehensive. So it wasn't all 30 something. They did advance it into, I think my number was 16 or 18 of them. But, it's a challenge. And if there is a history, encourage you to fight the insurance companies to have the testing that you need. If there's no history, still fight them to have the testing that you need, especially in situations like mine where, it was an advanced recurring.
That's great inspiration too, because I know sometimes we're hesitant to fight the power. I mean, when people tell us something can't be done or it's not allowable or whatever, to continue to fight, whether it be an advocate, being your own advocate with your doctor or with insurance companies, which are very bureaucratic. Christy, I've saved your comment here, and I don't know if I should have saved it, but I saved it here because, well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing this. Christy says, we definitely need to be encouraging our family members to get checked regularly. My father was recently diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, which if caught early would have a much different prognosis. So Christy's a good friend, and we love her very much. My first question is, when someone tells you this, either that they have cancer or someone close to them in their family has cancer, I personally struggle with what to say. What any advice for us? How do we, what do we say to that?
Yeah, it's that one's difficult because there's two sides of that coin, Ben. One is when you get the diagnosis, the person that's been diagnosed also struggles with, well, how do I tell my family? So I know my challenges with a stage 2, but imagine a stage 4 person, depending on when it was caught, having that conversation with, family, friends, and even employers for that matter. But in terms of, what you say to that person, it's really just be an ear to listen, to, kind of pull information out of them to understand how they're feeling. Because it goes back to what I said earlier, they're not going to know what it is they want, because so the first thing that folks want to say is, well, what can I do for you? How can I help? I have no idea. I've literally just been hit with the most devastating news possible. And at the time I thought it was the most devastating news. And quite honestly, I've had, worse news in the last year. And, that's just a death that's been in the family that was non-cancer related. And so, the recommendation is really just be an ear and listen and, kind of hear what they're saying. And from that conversation on how they share the information with you, it might be they come to you crying and they say, I just don't know what to do. And you can start off with, in terms of, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to go from here. Kind of walk them through, just kind of high level processes. Have you talked to the doctor? What appointments have you scheduled? That kind of thing, so that, they're thinking in that direction and in that light, regardless of whether or not they've done anything, in that direction to date. But, I can't overemphasize the need to just really be there for them, because sometimes it's just, I just need a shoulder to cry on. As a single person, I think that the challenge for me, and, having gone through it during COVID, the fear of the spread of the virus and not knowing a lot about the virus at the time I was going through radiation and living alone, it's that isolation. And so even with how fatigued I was, folks just don't understand the importance of that phone call or that text message or that video conference call. I still to this day have, it started when I was going through the radiation. Some friends from, DC were checking on me, and we started a Friday happy hour. We still to this day do that Friday happy hour. Every Friday, 5:30, 6 o'clock, we're on the phone. But it started during COVID. It started during my treatment because they had a fear of being around me at the time of, COVID, high peak COVID, and me going through radiation. But don't underestimate, the power of a quick phone call. Hey, just thinking about you. Don't underestimate the power of a quick text. Hey, just thinking about you. Yeah. It does wonders. It literally does wonders, because there's, we talk about the physical toll, and, we've all seen it, the people going through, chemotherapy with, the loss of hair, or those going through chemo or radiation with, just the weight loss and fatigue. But, the one thing that you don't think about beyond the physical oftentimes is the mental toll that it takes, because there are huge mental hurdles that have to be overcome, depression and anxiety and the whole nine. And we oftentimes don't think about, that aspect of, not only the diagnosis, but the ongoing treatment and, everything that comes after that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Patient says, Yvette, you're a beautiful, strong woman. Can you share more about the emotional support you had or is available to you? You mentioned the happy hour. You mentioned the text and phone calls.
The text messages, the video calls, there's so many resources out there in terms of support groups that you can join. That's not for everyone, let's be clear, because there are people at various stages. And, as an HR professional, I often joke, I'm like, I am the funniest person in the world and the funnest person in the world to get to know, but I honestly don't think I like people that much. So when you join these support groups, there are so many different personalities. You have, the gloom and doom types that just see no positivity out of the current situation. You have the super happy, always, bubbly person, and you're like, take it down 1,000. And then, there's the me group in the middle. And so you have to find the niche that's right for you. Support groups are not for everyone. And so you might get that emotional support just from a phone conversation with a friend. That might be all you need. And so really my encouragement and recommendation to folks is do what works for you. There's going to be so many out of the woodwork medical professionals that want to tell you how you should feel and how you should do certain things. Ignore it. Turn a deaf ear to all of that and do what works for you. Whether or not that's, I'm going to spend the weekend alone by myself, binge watching Netflix and watching Law and Order SVU till my eyes fall out. Mm-hmm. That might be the emotional support you need at that time. Or it might be, I actually need to spend some time around people. That might be the emotional support you need at that time. So, in terms of what works and what doesn't work, you have to figure it out on your own and do what works for you.
Since we're all in the relo biz, what is the role of relocation global mobility professionals in supporting transferees who might be going through this or have someone in their family going through this?
Great question, Ben. We don't think about that. And, I think it's difficult because the transferee may not share that they have this diagnosis. They may not share that they're in need of additional resources. But, if they are fully transparent and they are looking to, help you understand why there might be a delay in their response when, your providers are reaching out to them, I think the key is to, if you have a situation where a transferee reveals their diagnosis, then it behooves the RMC or, the moving company or whomever they're working with to try and work with them to figure out how they can make the customer experience top notch, even with the diagnosis. And I say this because, as a realtor, for example, they might be heavy on the, you have to be in a certain neighborhood. Let's look at, 5 houses today and 6 houses tomorrow. And the person might only have the energy to look at 2 today and 3 tomorrow. And I think that's something that, the providers need to understand, that there needs to be, while there is a sense of urgency in completing the move to the transferee satisfaction, there may need to be some leniency in terms of understanding why things may not be able to move at the rapid fire pace. So just keeping those lines of communication open. Obviously it's difficult if they haven't revealed to you what they're going through and why these delays. And so, just keep the lines of communication open. Ask the questions in terms of, how can we support you in this move? Whether or not it's, the virtual, kind of tour of the home needs to take place at a certain time because I have treatment appointments early in the morning. Those kinds of things.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about that too in our top 5. So I don't want to spoil it too much here.
Okay.
Janet's got a question. And Janet's really into kind of holistic things and also, taking care of herself using all different types of techniques. Janet says it's amazing the havoc and the stress that stress puts on our body system. Are there any new techniques that Yvette is putting to use that she can share? And I'm thinking she means to de-stress and release some of that stress.
I would say that none of the techniques that I personally use are new. It's just we need those constant reminders to actually use them. For example, I journal. I have a gratitude calendar, and it literally is me writing down once a day, one sentence, what am I grateful for today? It might be just getting up. It might be I woke up early enough to see a beautiful sunrise. It might be my daughter called me today, which is a whole different story. But it's just finding what relaxes you. Some days for me, it's listening to jazz or gospel. Other days, believe it or not, I am relaxed by listening to hardcore rap and hip hop.
Yes.
But it really changes day to day. There are some times, and my team can tell you, they'll ask me, well, how was your weekend? Well, I did absolutely nothing on Saturday. And by nothing, I mean nothing. I might have brushed my teeth that day, got up and changed out of the daytime jammies into the nighttime jammies.
Yes.
But when I joked about binge watching Netflix and/or an SVU marathon, it was actually not a joke.
Thank you.
That is one of my, kind of techniques. There have been, in terms of, how I have maintained my health, there have been some changes in terms of, what I eat to a certain extent, because I'm the consummate foodie. And so, you talk about diet, it's like, how do you even spell that word? Like, why? So I don't leave the house often, but I realize that I have to get in a certain number of steps. And so at work, great large property and facility, easy for me to do that. But when I'm home, it's just walking around the house, trying to get in that 30 minutes. Or because I know I'm like Wednesdays, for example, is Chicago Wednesdays. I'm going to sit down and watch Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD. But because that's 3 hours sitting in front of the TV, I'm like, well, I can actually exercise during those 3 hours and time it during commercials. So
There you go. Exercise during Chicago Wednesday. Janet. Scott says, Yvette, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Are there any charities supporting breast cancer that we can contribute? Great question, Scott. I'd like to know the answer to this as well. Even really inspired me, Yvette.
So there are, the primary one is the Susan G. Komen Foundation. There are others that are smaller, but the question is, where is that money really going? And if you look at the financials of the Susan G. Komen Foundation, you know exactly where those dollars are going. Because I constantly, am on social media, Facebook or IG, and, they follow you with your clicks. If you get all of these things that pop up on your screens about, support, breast cancer this, and they have the cutest little t-shirts and attire, I will do my research to see where that money is going. And so there's only one site that I use from Instagram, which is thebreastcancer.org. And it's a breast cancer site where, little t-shirts or whatever, because I know that it's supporting not only breast cancer research, but a lot of the items on that particular site are made by survivors.
Yeah, I love that idea. I use Charity Navigator also to understand what percentage of the money goes to the cause. So good stuff there. Appreciate that. Shannon saying, love remembering what we are grateful for. This is huge. This brings joy for sure. So much to be grateful for. Other people checking in. Look at Anthony. I love Chicago Wednesdays. Anthony coming in with the cogent analysis at the end there. Love it, Anthony. Appreciate you getting in there. Liz is sharing a funny story. I can't even read this, Liz. I can't even read it. I love it. Love it. Read that later. She's a nut. I love Liz so much. All right. So, you know what? We got a little bit of time. You got a top 5 for us today, Dr. Best?
Top 5. So when you talk about the top 5, I broke it down into the top 5 things that your family members and/or, the HR teams should consider when relocating a transferee with breast cancer. or just engaging them in conversation. And I know some of these we've already talked about.
Well, let's dive into it. Let's go. Number 5.
Right. Number 5, a newly diagnosed breast cancer has no clue, and I mean this with every ounce of everything in me, has no clue what they need because they are literally distracted, overwhelmed, and shocked by the diagnosis. So you're asking that person, what do you need? Useless. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just automatically volunteer. Hey, I'll show up and, cook dinner for you on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Or, like my Relo crew, hashtag Relo bitches. They'll provide, gift cards to Uber or Lyft. The benefit of Uber is, guess what? There's also Uber Eats. And so I underestimated, how tired I would be in terms of cooking. There are days when I didn't feel like cooking. So either A, I didn't eat, or B, it was let me order something from Uber Eats.
The 3 things you told me that I'm going to take away from this are, how do you feel? Just open-ended, shoulder to cry on question. How do you feel? And then you're gonna ask them if they made appointments yet, because they may not be thinking in that way, and you just want to ask them if And then number 3 is get Uber gift cards. Lots and lots of Uber gift cards, periodically. Just keep sending them over.
Keep sending them.
Jody's saying, "OMG, I love that." Yes, Jody. I don't know, is it the hashtag or the advice? Probably the hashtag. Knowing Jody. Elizabeth's saying 1,000%. That's great. All right, number 4.
Sometimes the last thing a breast cancer patient wants to discuss is their actual diagnosis. And so when you engage in conversation with them, talk about anything else. If they're a sports fanatic, talk sports. They'll love it. If they're a movie buff, talk about the latest movies that you've seen, what's streaming. But try to avoid talking about the diagnosis unless they bring it up. Now, if they bring it up, then it's something they want to talk about. So then you can engage in the conversation that way. But how are you feeling today? Or, how did your appointments go? Well, unless they're bringing that up, then it's clearly something that they don't want to talk about. So stray away from those conversations and to something more fun. Talk about what's going on in your life, because honestly, anything beyond what they're going through is going to be more positive and favorably received.
Okay. So it's not okay. So that's good to hear, because I didn't know if it was kind of tone deaf to not ask them about how it's going when it's kind of the elephant in the room. You're saying the distractions are kind of welcome though too.
Oh, the distractions are more than welcome. Than welcome. If they bring it up, then that means they want to talk about it. They're ready to, kind of share their experience. But there are some days when they don't want to talk about it.
I love it. Hit that like button out there. You're watching right now. This is fantastic information. People need to hear this. Go ahead and hit that like button, share it, comment. That gets a little more eyeballs on it. There are many people out there that need these top 5. Number 3.
So when relocating, finding the right care providers in the new location takes priority over, kind of the new home amenities and the neighborhood. I know that that's a priority when relocating them, but they're thinking, especially if they're moving far enough away where they can't still go to their existing providers. Take me, for example. I absolutely positively loved my care team at the Georgetown Lombardi Cancer Center in DC. And the biggest stressor for me was coming back to Orlando, having had kind of the white glove 5-star treatment in DC, and realizing I might have 2 to 3 star the first time around in Orlando. And so I actually asked my DC team if they had connections or someone in their network in Orlando that I could see. And that's how I actually found my new Orlando care team, and I am loving it. So understanding that, when relocating, that care team is going to be critical, because, depending on the stage of the diagnosis, depending on whether or not the cancer has metastasized, is going to determine how long they're going to need to be with those providers and how often they're going to have to see those providers. As I mentioned, I still go in every month for my injections and quarterly for my blood work. So, that's a critical piece of it. So don't underestimate the importance of, kind of being near a certain facility. The top school might not be a priority for them. They might want to drive to the school because, drive a further distance to, the top-notch school because they're living with this diagnosis and they would rather be closer to the facilities that they'll need.
I think that's so great. And I don't hear anybody talk about that from a DSP or a real estate agent standpoint within relocation, is offering that type of resource. We talk in terms of schools, we talk in terms of neighborhoods and other things like that, and proximity to the job, but we don't talk in terms of care facilities, care teams. Great advice. Number two,
the breast cancer patient might be terribly distracted. Please be patient with them. Folks talk about the brain fog when you're pregnant. It happens for BC patients as well. There are times when honestly I have to sit there like, what the hell's my name? Like, how do I write this? One of my compensation managers could tell you one day I could not figure out one of the most basic formulas. And I know he looked at me and probably thought I was crazy, but that was a day of heavy brain fog.
Yeah. Empathy is the rule, because we don't know what people are going through.
You never know. I mean, look at Chadwick Boseman. I have to admit that I was one of those that was like, what the hell is he doing? And is he losing all this weight for a future role? Only to find out the man was dying of cancer and was battling it, yet still pushing through every day.
Wow. Number one.
And the number one thing that I say, do not ask a breast cancer survivor if their breasts are real. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, no, this set is not mine. They're mine because I paid for them.
You bought them.
Construction. But, that's such an insensitive question, but you all would be surprised how many times I actually get asked that question. Now,
I put this in the same bucket with the previous one. Just never ask that question in general.
Dude,
you'll be all right.
You would be amazed. And it could be because, growing up, folks know that, I was not the most well endowed, and, so, all right, there's that population, but, I think it happens just out of curiosity. Folks want to know, well, did you go through the reconstruction process? When you frame the conversation that way, it's very, very different than, well, are your breasts real? So.
Wow. Liz says, wow. I say, wow. This is wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was, we ended on a little bit of a humorous note there. But you know what? I want to echo something that was in the comments up here. Jamie says, thanks for sharing your story, Yvette. You might have saved a life today.
Wow. That's powerful.
It is powerful.
You're very welcome.
So
and, it's just, I know we're running out of time, but, I occasionally post my journey on Facebook, and one day I hear this weird ringtone, and come to find out it was Facebook Messenger. And it happened to be someone that follows me on Facebook and was like, hey, I was recently diagnosed with breast cancer and just wanted you to know that because I've been following your journey, I'm now more confident in how I need to proceed with, my care. And so, again, it's being fully transparent and just talking about it. We can save lives. And, my recommendation is to share and have open, honest discussions with your family.
Well, thank you for that amazing advice. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for inspiring us all to go get checked early and often. I've learned a lot. This has been great. The engagement. Thank you, everybody that tuned in today. Thank you for all the comments and the questions and the support. I mean, the engagement's been tremendous. Hit that like button. Throw a little heart out there as well. Evan said, I'm glad everyone watching. You got to see how much of a strong, amazing, and funny person Yvette is. People are sending so much love. Everyone's here for you, Brian. Great session. Yes, thank you so much, Yvette. Just thank you.
You are most welcome, and thank you to everyone who took the time out of their schedules to listen. Closing words: early detection saves lives. Do those self-exams at least monthly.
Amen. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it so much. Take care, and we will see you next week.